Hello Pitcrew and new sim racers, Sean Cole the Simpit here, and if you were watching this video, there's a good chance that you've seen your share of YouTube videos featuring sim rig tours, or maybe you've seen Joe Rogan's over-the-top sim rig or other famous people's rigs. If that has been your exposure so far, well, it's probably given you the impression that it's extremely expensive to get into sim racing. What if I told you that wasn't the case? Today, I'm going to cover my top picks on how to get into sim racing on the cheap. To start off in sim racing, all you really need is a controller and preferably a steering wheel and pedals. You will also need a console, like an Xbox or a PlayStation, or you can race on the PC, but generally speaking, it's a little less expensive to start things off with the console, and then on top of that, we're going to need our game, our software of choice. So with the consoles being a little less expensive, let's start things off there, and then you will need that game of choice. In the case of the Xbox, you've got Forza. In the case of the PlayStation, you've got Gran Turismo. Both of these offer great driving and racing experiences, and then you have titles that work on both, like Assetto Corsa Competizione, WRC, and F1 Pick Your Favorite Year. All of these games have offline driving modes as well as leaderboard competitions or some kind of online racing element so that you can actually test your skills against the masses, and starting things off with a controller is totally acceptable. It's a little bit more difficult, but it's where a lot of us did start our sim racing careers. Now, depending on your loyalty to Sony with the PlayStation or to Microsoft with the Xbox, you can use a compatible steering wheel. A steering wheel will allow a lot more accuracy and a lot more precision and smoothness. This will make the driving experience more rewarding and more realistic. There are also huge benefits to racing with a wheel that offers force feedback. When racing on a console, it is critical that the steering wheel and pedals come as a kit because they need to plug into the console with only one USB. Now, when considering which piece of hardware, which wheel and pedal kit do I want to use when racing on a console, my top pick right now, hands down, is the Logitech G920 for Xbox racers and the Logitech G29 for the PlayStation warriors. These wheels are currently priced as low as $229 brand new, and used ones can be found for only about $125 on eBay. They offer great force feedback and seamless integration with the consoles, plus they are PC compatible should you ever upgrade to PC racing. Now, there are other wheels available. They're going to cost you a little bit more money, like the Thrustmaster T300, which will set you back about $400. I also need to mention the new Moza Racing R3 bundle for the Xbox only racers, which just came out for $399. It features a direct drive motor, making it a very inexpensive entry point for a direct drive wheel. However, it's still hard to beat the tried and true Logitech G series. So at this point, we have a total cost of entry, including if you had to buy a PS5 brand new for $450, plus a G29 for $229, plus a copy of Assetto Corsa Competizione for $29 off of Steam, would set you back $708 to start from scratch. Without the PS5, it's only $258 from never sim racing to racing with a decent wheel on a quality piece of software. When advising people on the PC route for sim racing, things get a whole lot more complicated. There are a lot more variables to take into consideration. The main component of the computer is the graphics card, and the graphics card on its own can cost a lot more than a console system. So it is a lot more expensive right out of the gate. Plus, computers are constantly evolving, and because of that, the software, the new games are being built for tomorrow's computer that is always raising those minimum specs. So a computer that works today for the minimum level might in 12 or 18 months be dated and already not performing as well. In general, you're going to spend at least $1,200 to get a decent computer to meet today's minimum specs, and a lot of gamers out there are spending between $3,000 and $4,000 on super systems. Now, with that said, the PC route opens sim racers up to a few more titles that are arguably more sophisticated. So you have titles that actually carry over from the console, like F1 Pick Your Favorite Year, Assetto Corsa Competizione, and WRC. And now those same titles support things like VR or triple screens, and the use of wheel and pedals from different brands. Many PC titles also allow for third-party apps which can expand those games even further, so technically they are better than their console counterparts. Now that we've shifted to the PC, we have a list of other games that we can now consider. Games like iRacing, which is a subscription-based game, and you have to pay even more for the content. So really, it's not a budget-friendly sim. But we have other titles on the PC that expand things even further. Some of my favorites being Le Mans Ultimate, Race Room, Assetto Corsa, Automobilista, and a few others. Almost all of these have enhanced physics, great force feedback, offline and online racing. Most of these will cost you about the same as a box title, somewhere between $30 and $60, and usually available on Steam. So even though we've moved to the PC, my hardware recommendations for wheel and pedals really don't change. The Logitech G Series is still a great option for this, best bang for the buck you're going to get, and all the wheels that I mentioned are compatible on the PC, so any of those options will work. And because we're on the PC, we can now break away from the kit. So maybe you started things off with the Logitech G29, you thought the wheel was great, but you wanted a new set of pedals. You can actually unplug those pedals from the wheelbase and plug a new set of pedals directly into the PC, and that is another one of the great advantages of PC sim racing. The next financial hurdle in sim racing is, what do I mount my wheel and pedals to if you went down that option? And the answer is, you don't need to buy anything super fancy. Most people start off on the console, they're usually sitting at their couch or at a chair, and all you need is some kind of a stand to put your wheel on and put your pedals down on the ground. I mean, even a little fold-up table might work, but it might prove to be a little too lightweight and just kind of flop around when you're turning the wheel violently. And in those cases, you can always buy a really inexpensive wheel stand. This is just going to hold the wheel and pedals in place, and they're made for working with couches or chairs, and they usually start off at about $70 on Amazon, maybe $100 for something more brand name, and up to $200 for something with a lot of extra options on it. It's also pretty easy to build this kind of structure out of any leftover wood or metal scraps that you have in the garage. As long as you can get yourself a wheel deck at the right height and angle and distance and something to secure your wheel and pedals to, it's going to work out great. So when you're drifting out of corners, all your gear isn't moving all over the place, regardless of what you're sitting at. So at this point, if we add, like, let's say $100 for our average starter wheel stand, we're now looking at only $808 from scratch, or $358 if you already had your console. For PC users, things are a little bit different. You're usually gaming at your desktop already. Most of these starter wheels have a clamp on them, so you can just clamp them to your desk, or they have a clamp available for not too much more money. And then for your pedals, you can just throw them on the ground. I mean, I will recommend that you either put some books or a few pieces of wood behind them to keep them from pushing back when you press on the brake, but that is the minimum that you're going to need. And if you want more, you can actually build just like a simple wedge, just sort of a V shape that would sit on the ground, allow you to bolt those pedals to it, and that'll actually prevent it from sliding back and keep them at the right height and angle for your feet. Typically, the next issue to resolve when sim racing from a desktop is the chair itself. If you think about it, most gaming or desktop chairs, they are on wheels. That's problematic, and they swivel. Now, I can get over the swivel thing, but the rolling around, you got to stop that, because when you press on the brake, you'll just roll away from your rig. You're going to be holding onto your wheel for dear life. So hopefully the chair has locking wheels. That's the easiest way, of course. Or there are other methods you could do, like tying a rope from the chair to your desk or to your wedge, or a bungee cord might do the trick, or you get little cups to hold the wheels in place. Anything that's going to secure the chair is going to make it a much better driving experience. Now, for those who have the budget, they have the space, and they want to take their sim racing a little more seriously, the best way is to use a dedicated sim rig. And there are a few ways to go about this, with the least expensive being building your own rig. You can reference my Deathmobile rigs, but basically any wood, any scrap metal, anything you can find in your garage or your neighborhood is probably going to be suitable to build your own kind of rig. Then you find yourself a cheap seat, bolt it to it, and generally speaking, you can build a good, stable, perfectly modified for you rig for about $200. The other option is a retail purpose-built rig. So I've seen rigs as little as $200 without a seat, $400 with a seat on Amazon, or you can get brand name rigs that'll usually start out at about $500 and will last you a lifetime easily. Another option for beginners that is a little bit easier on the budget are the fold-up series from like Next Level Racing. They're light series, I think they call them, and they go for about $249, and they're pretty decent for the amount of money. So in the end, the startup cost for sim racing really isn't that much. You're looking at $358 on the low end, maybe $2,000 for a brand new scratch-built PC system and rig all set up ready to go, and your best variation might be somewhere in the middle. And in the end, that is a far cry from the $70,000 professional rig. The main thing to remember is that you can always upgrade over time. You can always improve your setup. So if you're out there every night driving laps, having fun, doing races, it's going to be really easy to justify spending more money on your new favorite hobby. So I hope this video helps you on your beginner journey into sim racing. Be sure to give it a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Be sure to subscribe to the channel so you can find out when our next video comes out. And my next video in this series is going to be something like, okay, I got all this gear, now what do I do? How do I have more fun? How do I race? Or something more cleverly titled. Thank you for watching. This is the Simpit. I'm Sean Cole, and I'll see you on the track.